Most people screw up their bulks. In fact, if you hear someone using the word bulk, that probably means that they're going to mess it up. We shouldn't be bulking. We shouldn't be seeking to gain weight. We should be building muscle. If you've never deliberately attempted to gain muscle before, you may not realize how hard it can be. Let me detail the 5 most common mistakes I see people making so you can avoid them. 1. People don't seem to understand that the goal of the mass phase is not to increase scale weight. The goal of the mass phase is to drive gym performance while slowly increasing food and maintaining body composition over time. So your indicator is not the scale. We know from literature and we know from the real world that you can build muscle without gaining weight. Now, of course, there are limits to this, right? If you want to be a 300-pound shredded bodybuilder, you cannot get to 300 pounds if you're 160 without gaining weight. You'll have to gain weight along the way. I'm not saying weight gain is bad. What I am saying is that your goal is not to gain weight. Weight gain is the result. Weight gain is the result of a mass phase, but it is not the variable we're seeking to drive. What we're focusing on is gym performance, slowly increasing food over time, and trying to maintain body composition. The last point is perhaps the most important. By the end of a well-executed mass phase, your body composition should not be dramatically worse. If you start off at around 12%, you should end ideally at around 12%. Maybe it's 14%, but you should not get fluffy and sloppy and fat. And the way you get sloppy, fluffy, and fat is by attempting to drive the scale and not progress and food. By that same token, the second mistake that people tend to make is that they're just too aggressive with their bulks. They try to gain too much weight too quickly. If you look at the world's best bodybuilders, enhanced bodybuilders on the Olympia stage, you will see that their progress is slow and incremental. Perhaps the best example of this is Nick Walker. Nick Walker is a multiple-time Olympia competitor and amazing bodybuilder. And throughout the course of his career, his competitive career, he's gained about 100 pounds. And that averages to about 10 pounds per year. 10 pounds per year. That's less than 1 pound per month of weight gain. So if you enter your mass phase and you think you're going to gain 2 pounds a week, 3 pounds a week, you know what's going to happen? You're going to get fat. So you need to slow down your rate of gain and be prepared for a long, deliberate, intentional mass phase. Conversely, the third biggest mistake that people make is the opposite. They're just too afraid of any weight gain at all. The moment their abs get a little blurry, the moment things get just a little soft, they freak out. But if you want to gain muscle, you are going to have to gain weight, as I said. You're not going to become 300 pounds magically. And some of that weight is going to be fat and water. That's okay, because of course at the end of a mass phase, we maintain or we diet, and you can strip that all away. So don't be terrified of minute changes in body composition. Don't end your diet just because you don't look perfect and your chiseled jaw isn't quite as sharp as it used to be. The fourth mistake people make is that they don't think about food quality and they just overindulge in junk food. Now, some guys can get away with that in terms of body composition, right? You can eat like trash and still look good. Some people can do that. However, it's still bad for you. It doesn't really matter how you look if you feel terrible. And this is particularly important for enhanced athletes because enhanced athletes are already taxing their systems. They're taxing their body, and you don't want to add additional stress by feeding yourself garbage. So even though you're trying to gain weight, don't have all the calories come from processed foods. I'm not saying you can't eat with your friends. I'm not saying you can't ever cheat, but your diet should not consist of burgers, pizza, ice cream, and fries. Clean it up. Lastly, the biggest mistake that people make, and I've echoed this in some of my other points, is that they just don't give the mass phase enough time to work. It takes time. Bodybuilding is not a sprint, it is a marathon. You need to commit to a lengthy bulk. That doesn't mean you can bulk indefinitely, but you need to be prepared for the long haul. You're not going to magically turn into a mass monster. And so your bulks need to be long and intentional. I would say on average that most successful bulks range from somewhere between 3 to 6 months. More than that tends to be pushing it, and you'll probably need a maintenance or a diet phase in between, but you really cannot expect to gain appreciable size in 6 or 8 weeks. It's just not going to happen. I hope these strategies and tips are useful to you. Let me know in the comments if you're massing now or if you plan to in the future. Thanks.